This is Akashvani Chennai. We bring to you an interview titled Viksit Bharat, the evolutionary trajectory of a rising power. Participating in the interview is economic and political analyst Shri T.K. Vasudevan. He is interviewed by Shri Amrit Bhargav.
Welcome to the studios of All India Radio for this week's English program. The years beginning from 2014 signal the dawn of a new age for India. It was to symbolize a great nation and a civilization that saw the rise of a new brand of political and economic leadership in the form of our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. In making India a superpower, the stature of his leadership and thought process in engaging with our vibrant economy has been unique. To understand this and the accompanying programs of the Government of India for socio-economic revitalization, we have with us Mr. T.K. Vasudevan, renowned economic analyst and public commentator, as our guest. On behalf of All India Radio, it is a pleasure to host him for the weekly English program at our studios today. Viksit Bharat, the evolutionary trajectory of a rising power.
Thank you, sir.
Before we get into the subjects, what do you think has happened after the elections of 2014 and how have the people responded to the strong-willed leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister in the journey to make India a global superpower and welfare state?
Yeah, there was a vast change between what happened before 2014 and what happened later on. There is a sea change, I would say. Earlier, we had a lot of problems like the last 3 years of the last government, there was a total policy paralysis and inflation was almost touching double digits and capital formation was not coming forward. A lot of projects were there which were stalled. They could not be completed. And there were some internal disturbances, lot of scandals and some scams also were reported. And there was more than one power center at the government level. So these were actually, affecting the growth trajectory at that time. And almost the economic activities were stalled. There were a lot of supply bottlenecks, distribution bottlenecks, and production bottlenecks. The supply chain was, highly disrupted. There were a lot of strikes and other things. But all of this has changed immediately after Mr. Narendra Modi took over. But actually, when Narendra Modi took over, there was a lot of confidence in him. People had a lot of confidence in Mr. Modi, and Mr. Modi instilled a lot of confidence in the minds of the people. Narendra Modi had already performed as a very good performing chief minister in Gujarat for the last 12 years. And he was seen as a man of development and delivery. So that is why people immediately, accepted whatever Mr. Narendra Modi said during the election campaign just before that. But that was a great surprise. And because of the confidence the people had in Narendra Modi that this party came to power with a thumping majority. I mean, after 30 years, one party came to power with full majority. This is the electoral part of it. Now, immediately after elections, what happened? The burden of delivery lies on the shoulders of the government. And the public confidence Mr. Modi had already collected over the past few months has to be carried on further. So what he did first was, he invited all the SAARC leaders for swearing in ceremony. That was a great gesture on his part. Before that, nothing of that sort happened. For the first time, we are inviting the heads of the government in the neighborhood for a swearing ceremony. That made a great impact. Secondly, even before the government formation, I'll tell you, he invited all the cabinet secretaries because he was quite new to Delhi government, central government. He was only a state leader. Now he's a central leader, all India leader. So, he has to learn the ropes. So, he called the meeting of cabinet secretaries, all departmental secretaries, and he asked them to be very free and frank about what all they want to do for the development of the country. He took them into confidence, and he gave them lot of confidence in turn. So, it was an open session. And he also assured that whatever commercial decisions you are taking, in case something went wrong also, you will not be punished. That assurance was given to them. And subsequently, they came out openly with so many things, what all they wanted to do. And they might have even suggested the same thing to previous governments, but they might not have been accepted also. For such things also, they came forward to tell. And that was a great impact in the bureaucracy itself. Complete bureaucracy was taken aback by that. This kind of an openness and transparency. Then the next thing he did was, I still remember, one day Mr. Modi comes and looks around the offices, and many officers were not in their seat. They were either loitering in the gardens or they were in the canteen. Then immediately he sends one circular. The people should be sitting in their desk and do the work. Next day, the trend of going out of the office for on some errand or other, that stopped completely. So that a new work culture started. It is not that these people were not delivering earlier, but the point is you should be also seen sitting and doing your work at the desk. And the third one he did was, those days in the North Block and South Block, lot of people, brokers and other people will be roaming around that places. They will be coming for something or other. They will be coming with some request, some demand, some request and all that. So this should not be, the powers of corridor of the central government should not be swarmed by such people. That is the concept. So immediately he stopped that also. And subsequently a new work culture started. That is how he formed after all, he is a prime minister. He said he will govern the country very differently. He said there will be minimum government, more governance. That was a very catchy thing. So he had to deliver, and so he started with this. So he instilled confidence. He took the cabinet secretaries into confidence, and he created a new work culture. And subsequently, one more thing he did, I remember, he stopped the Lal Batti culture. Lal Batti means that red beacon is there for VIP movement. A person, a government servant or an elected representative is not a special person for whom these privileges should be there. So he stopped that. He wanted to identify himself as a common man, just like any other citizen. So that also created a lot of impact on Narendra Modi's image. So that is how he started. And subsequently, immediately, he did not miss one day. He did not wait for a single day. Immediately he started running. Hit the ground running, they say. Like that he started, hit the ground running right from the day one. Then what happened? He comes up with a beautiful program called Swachh Bharat. Swachh Bharat is a very all-encompassing thing. It's not just construction of toilets, keeping your environment clean, keeping your rivers and other water bodies clean. It is a culture which we have to imbibe in our country, and especially for women who had to rather. Now it is a thing of the past, so I have to use past tense only. So our women should not wait for the nightfall to go out of the house for certain things. So, because that is a very, that will put their life in danger, and anything can happen. Therefore, any criminal activity can happen. So, in order to avoid those things, to protect the women from such things, he started Swachh Bharat campaign that really caught the imagination of a lot of people. Similarly, he started Jan Dhan accounts. That is actually a part of financial inclusion project. Jan Dhan, I remember I was in the bank only at that time. Jan Dhan program was started all of a sudden. I will just narrate it in about 30 seconds. We were all in the bank. Prime Minister is asking how many people have not got the account in the country. And somebody says it is about more than 45% people of that time it was only 115, 120 crores. They don't have bank accounts. Without bank accounts, how do they get their money? Because all the government schemes, benefits, monetary benefits of the government scheme should go into the account through DBT, direct benefit transfer. That was introduced by the previous government, but that was not effective, that was not complete. So what he did, why so many accounts are not opened? No answer. Then he insisted, okay, that time Arun Jaitley was there, finance minister. He is asking Arun Jaitley how much time it will take to get all these people bank accounts. Arun Jaitley consults Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India people say it will take 2 years. Why I am telling you, financial inclusion is the old concept. Financial inclusion started sometime in 2005-6. Even after 9 years of implementation, we could not complete the target. We still had a large chunk of population without bank accounts. So, if Arun Jaitley says it will take 2 years, Prime Minister is not going to wait for 2 years. He wants it fatafat. So what happens? He goes there and tells, okay, sir, within 6 months we will complete it. That is how it started. One night, the same night, instructions go to bank chairman. Bank chairman were alerted. Bank chairman's office alerted the zonal officers, other controlling officers, regional officers, mandal officers, whatever. Mandal officers, regional officers alerted the branch managers. We were all sitting till 8:30. Special advice is coming, some special instructions is coming, just wait. 8:30, they are sending to chairman's office. Chairman's office just copy paste and send it to zonal officers. Zonal officer sends it to branch managers. Tomorrow we have to start the work. So we are, all of us and all people came forward. From next day we started the work. And believe me, in 2 months, less than 2 months, 32 crore new accounts were opened. We all went out door to door. You have an account? Yes. You have an account? No. Immediately fill up the form, take the photo in the mobile and open the account. So ultimately, but 32 crore means what? It's not a small size. It is the size of the American population. No country could have made this kind of a feat earlier.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us on the mission after 2014 and the road towards maximum governance and minimum government, which is to lead to Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, which you have so elaborately explained to us. We shall endeavor to get some insights into the specific programs launched by the Government of India and its impact for creating a resurgent nation. Sir, the programs and measures by the Government of India have been multi-dimensional. In short, what is their role in steering the economic and all-round mission of the last 10 years?
There were a lot of flagship programs. In fact, I would say all the programs introduced by the new government were all flagship programs only. I cannot leave anyone significantly. The thing is, we have one NITI, Niti Ayog. Through them, we have received about 4,600 initiatives. I mean, this government has created 4,600 initiatives for policies, programs and implementation. And I can tell you about a few of them. Swachh Bharat was there. That is a very massive program implemented across the country. Digital India is another great thing. Jan Dhan, banking reforms included. And in banking reforms, again, you have got loans, delivery of loans, the time taken for loans, expansion of credit delivery and all that. There is one program called Gati Shakti, PM Gati Shakti, that was introduced in 2021, immediately after Corona. Many people are not aware of this in this country. That was actually started as an infrastructure push. Because at that time, due to Corona, near about 13-14 months, we did not have sufficient revenues in the country. Economic activity was very, very low, and the economy had to be, kick-started, like they do jump-start in automobiles. We had to kick-start it, and that is why this program was started. In 2014 and 15 period, lot of flagship schemes were introduced, like Make in India. It is another massive program across the country. Startup India is another wonderful, beautifully designed, beautifully conceived program. Similarly, there is MSME definition was changed for entire MSME sector. The definition was changed, credit policies were changed, and the one new scheme was introduced to boost the production in India. That is, the manufacturing facility has to be expanded. More production should be done. More production means more jobs, more employment. More employment means more income in the hands of the people. Income in the hands of the people means the demand will automatically rise. Once the demand rises, automatically production also rises, and people will go for expansion of capacities. This is how the economic cycle is completed. Now, there was a scheme called production linked incentive, PLI. People who go on producing more and more will be getting incentive from the government of India on account of your increased capacity utilization, increased capacity creation also. Similarly, there was a special program for reduction of dependence on imports, because everything you cannot depend on imports. You will have to indigenously design things. I still remember it was introduced in the manufacturing of motor cars and two-wheelers very early when Nitin Gadkari was in charge of MSME. There, he immediately called the car companies and found out what will be the foreign component of the cars. Many companies, about 30-40%. They said more than 50% is imported components only. So they systematically reduced it. Only in the case of one company, they said only 5% we have to depend on Korean things, Korean imports. We cannot help it like that. So there was a very high pressure on the companies and manufacturers to go for new processes, new markets, indigenization of all the processes, the raw materials, and so that this will increase your employment generation in the country, and more and more people can be employed. Unemployment levels will come down. And all these, these programs are not isolated. Mainly, there was, in the previous regime, there was a problem of capital mobilization. IPOs got stuck. Follow-on IPOs were almost not there. But now, only IPOs will not be sufficient. You have to go for loans also. So how to expand the loan? So they started Mudra loan scheme. That was a flagship loan scheme by not only public sector banks, but also the private sector banks. And in Mudra loans also, there were three categories: smaller business people, medium business people, and large business people. I think these people have, this government knows how to generate funds for huge projects. For example, infrastructure is there. Infrastructure requires a lot of money. And in the previous government, at the time of previous government, maybe in the year 1990, 2000 itself, this long-term credit companies like NBFCs, both non-banking financial companies, they were all converted into banks also, and even commercial banks started giving for long-term projects. And there again, banks were given total freedom by the government of India. There was no political intervention. Whereas in the previous time, there were a lot of political interventions, and there were a lot of tweaking of credit policies also as far as big projects were concerned. But all those things were not there. So in banking itself, by bringing about the reforms in the banks itself, the government could do many things. Like the bank's capital has to be improved. That is called CAR, capital adequacy ratio was only 11% at that time. But we were going by the Basel III norms, according to which the capital adequacy ratio should not be less than 15%. So we recapitalized the banks. We stopped government control over banks to a large extent. We even privatized to some extent. I mean, part privatization was there, and merger of banks also took place. And we introduced IBC, that is called Insolvency Bankruptcy Code, so that all the bad loans can be easily recovered, can be addressed to. At least they can be, they will not weigh down on the lending capacity of the individual banks. That is how they increase the capital, they reduce the NPA levels in the banking industry, and that is why we will find the bank credit increased 3 times in less than 11 years. So this is another massive program they did. Like that, there are so many other programs. Startup India, mainly I have to tell about that, because startups means, it is not okay, a company can be established, can be not more than 10 years old. If you have an idea, you can start a commercial venture for which the venture capital will be given. We have a Startup India fund scheme is also there. We have near about 2 lakh initiatives. They are called incubators actually. So far we have financed from in the last 5 to 6 years we have financed about over 2 lakh incubators under this scheme. What is special about this is within a very short period we created unicorns. So what is a unicorn? The unicorn is a company having a turnover of more than $1 billion. So that kind of small idea, but a big commercial enterprise. So we created that, and more than 100 unicorns were created in a very short time. The point is, the atmosphere is open. India should become a manufacturing center of the world. This should be it's not only a financial hub, monetary hub, it should also be a capital hub. That is the principle of all these things. So to a large extent, all these flagship company programs are still working. Gati Shakti, in the matter of Gati Shakti, I'll tell you, it was infra push, I said, infrastructure. Because you are talking about 2047, a completely developed country means you have to have all the things in place. It is not that the country will develop and subsequently you will start the infrastructure, laying the roads, laying the airports, harbors and other things, waterways, airways and all those things. So you have to keep these things in order even before you reach a higher trajectory of growth. Why? Because in infrastructure there are 2 advantages. You invest in infrastructure, it generates employment, it generates income, it kickstarts the economy, and once again. So the infra spending or capex spending is a fillip to economic growth. That is one thing. Secondly, when you are looking at a very high rate of growth, completely developed infrastructure will be very, very helpful for higher growth. So that is why this government is insisting on infrastructure. For example, infra spending was only 2 lakh crores in 2014 and now it is 12 lakhs crores. So that makes a lot of difference. That is why, not only that, it will also increase, enhance the lifestyle of the company. It will reduce the travel burden. Automatically it will result in a very high growth.
That brings us to the end of this part of the interview with Mr. T.K. Vasudevan, financial and economic commentator on Viksit Bharat, the evolutionary trajectory of a rising power, where he has highlighted the multi-pronged approach of the government of India in leaving no stone unturned to ensure that India is a superpower by 2047. How India would be envisioned for its centenary year of independence in 2047. India is not just a nation to govern, but the life breath of its billion-plus people. In realizing the aspirations of this generation, our Honorable Prime Minister's vision spans the gamut of reach and welfare. Starting from the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan in 2014 to the setting up of the Niti Aayog replacing the Planning Commission, to the historic introduction of the Unified Payments Interface for streamlining transactions and the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Transformation, Ayushman Bharat and the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, the introduction of the Vande Bharat trains and the infrastructural impetus for Kashi Vishwanath Dham and the Ujjain Mahakal corridors, and the reconstruction of the Central Vista and Seva Tirth, the illustrious list is endless and growing. Sir, can you enlighten us on the importance of India as Vishwaguru in the progress to achieving Viksit Bharat 2047?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, Vishwaguru means somebody whom we can look upon for guidance, some advice. But India was a Vishwaguru long back, 1,000 years back, before this invasion from Islam and Christianity happened. But now slowly we are trying to regain our old position, our old glory, because today we find world countries approaching us not for any help or advice. They are asking us for intervention also. See, for example, when Ukraine and Russia war started, European nations found it very difficult. So they wanted India to intervene. Zelensky wanted us to intervene so that the war can be stopped, the damages can be controlled. So everywhere people are now looking for Indian Prime Minister to intervene in world affairs. But there is another reason why we are trying to fill the gap, because in the world today, we don't have any great leaders of stature. Putin, yes, today is a very powerful man. Then Xi Jinping is there. So there are a lot of countries with lot of conflicts, internal and external conflicts, where somebody has to mediate. Even the United Nations cannot mediate. United Nations can only pass on a resolution. Beyond that, they cannot do anything. Even 2 days back, they have passed a resolution to stop the Ukraine and Russia war, where we abstented along with America. So the point is, who is that person with international repute, stature, who can really, pull things together, do something to stop the miseries? That is where we fill in. People have got a lot of confidence in Narendra Modi because Narendra Modi's words carry a lot of weight. Narendra Modi has expressed that he has very good intentions and his intentions are honest, and he is also following whatever he has promised, not only in India but also abroad. So his words carry a lot of weight, not only within the country but also in the entire world. I don't know whether people remember, there is a place called Burkina Faso, which is a North African country, has a very young leader there, military leader. He was talking about half an hour regarding the virtues of having diplomatic relations with India. Only Pakistan is not listening to us. Otherwise, if Pakistan listened to India those days, they would not have come to this pass today. That is very unfortunate about it. Now, how India has got this new image across the world, that is because we are a growing power. See, from 11th position, we have become almost third position as far as GDP is concerned. Similarly, we are the fourth military power in the world. Though we are a fourth military power, we have not aggrandized on any other country. We have got very high moral standards as far as our external affairs are concerned. Similarly, we are a huge population without any interruption to daily life. See, we are growing at the rate of 78% right now, but this has been achieved not by any interruptions. Say, for example, in 1980s, China went big on economic reforms. They wanted to become the manufacturing center of the world. But there are a lot of interruptions to ordinary lives of the citizens. But that is not happening here. Even though we have a very huge population, there is no civil unrest anywhere in the world. People were talking about a Gen Z problem rising in India. Because in India, everything is available. All things are available at all times for all sort of people. There is no shortage. There is no supply chain bottlenecks. So, Gen Z protest or Gen Z revolt, that kind of a revolt is totally remote. The possibilities are very remote in India. So, we have got a track record of continuing growth rate above 5%. That is one thing. While maintaining the high growth rate, we have also maintained inflation at a very low level, within 4 to 5%. The first 5 years it was less than 4%. In the second 5 years it was 5 to 6%, and it touched 6% only for 3 months. That is also a very creditable achievement. And now again it has come back to 3%. And we have got a very strong democratic institutions. We have got a very strong judiciary one side. We have got parliament and state assemblies on the other side. We have got a constitution, and things are going as per constitution. We are not shy of our past history. We are not shy of our old traditions and other things. We were actually the first universities of the world. We had 7 universities of repute, starting from Nalanda, Takshashila, and Kanchipuram near Chennai. We had all those things. We were the Vishwaguru those days. Now we are redefining our education sector. We are redefining technology for that matter. See, once upon a time we were depending on foreign technology for each and everything. Now ISRO is carrying 105 satellites in a single vessel is a great achievement. And the world over, people come to us for launching of rockets because it is a much cheaper option. And in defense, though we have got a very strong defense, okay, we are also a nuclear power, but we have no first use policy. Though we have not signed the non-proliferation treaty, we have got a very high degree of self-restraint as far as aggression is concerned. We do not necessarily needle neighbors or faraway countries. So these are the things which add to the intrinsic value of a nation. So people believe, yes, India is a very reliable partner. India will keep its promises, whatever they promise, and India is something whom we can relate to, we can seek guidance from. See, for example, European Parliament. Europe was in deep trouble, and we only told them, our finance minister went and told them very point blank, European problem is a European problem. It is not an Indian problem. And Europe should not think that Europe alone is the world. Similarly, now they have come forward. After so many years, they were all a satellite of the United States all these days. Now they have started exploring world outside United States also. They have come forward to have a bilateral trade agreement with us. Similarly, world over, we are having a great image, and that image is mainly because of the sincerity which this present government exhibits, and the kind of track record with respect to development, human welfare. See, for example, when we talk about human welfare, you remember Yemen, there was a civil war, and a lot of people, about more than 4,000 Indians were stuck. We went there and we rescued the entire thing. Not only that, near about 458 foreigners were also, 458 people from 41 countries were also rescued by us. Similarly, in case of Operation Sindoor, we told very clearly, we were not listening to any powers. No third-party intervention as far as India-Pakistan bilateral issues are concerned. One country tried to, threaten us by putting reciprocal taxes. We did not budge. They said August 9 is the last date, you have to sign. We did not sign. September 22, you have to sign. We did not sign. There was a lot of pressure was there, but we did not budge in. But on the contrary, what we did is, you have put 26% tariff, and that is going to affect us. So immediately what we did, whatever America was trying to import, whatever we were exporting to America, we started exporting to different countries. Near about 40 countries came forward to fill the gap. That is how we are addressing the international issues. So we are capable. See, first of all, we should have a lot of self-confidence. People should have self-confidence in the government also. And government is doing all those things very, very accurately. So ultimately what happened, in the case of Operation Sindoor, we called the nuclear bluff of Pakistan. So these are the things which take us to a higher level. And very recently also, we have, for 60 years, there was an Naxal problem in India. Our Home Minister said 31st of March 2026 will be the last date for Naxal, and today Naxalism is complete. For 60 years we could not do it. Today we are doing it. Similarly, we have started, last week only we have started implementing a new SOP, Standard Operating Procedure, which is called Prahar, for anti-terror activities. See, all these times what was happening was terror activities will happen here and there, and there was a panic reaction. Immediately there will be, yes, there will be a panic reaction and there will be immediate investigation and other things. Now, everything will be going through a particular channel so that the people will be in hot pursuit. For example, only 2 days back, the Operation Trashi was there. 326 days, the defense people were in the jungle, and they eliminated the 7 terrorists holed up there. This kind of a success, all these things increases our confidence level, and accordingly we are having a very enviable long track record. Naturally, we will become a Vishwa Guru over a period of time. People will definitely look up to India for any sort of a guidance, advice or intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the roadmap that India has taken to become a Vishwa Guru and to earn its rightful place in the Committee of Nations. Listeners, that brings us to the end of the interview with Mr. T.K. Vasudevan, economic analyst and public commentator on Viksit Bharat, the evolutionary trajectory of a rising power. Thank you.
You heard to the interview Viksit Bharat, the evolutionary trajectory of a rising power. Participating in the interview was economic and political analyst Shri T.K. Vasudevan. He was interviewed by Shri Amrit Bhargav. This program came to you from the studios of Akashvani, Chennai.